Hey everyone, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world, including this one, and all in one place. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts, we explore one of the most mysterious and misunderstood organizations in history. A group accused of everything from world domination to secret philanthropy, from occult rituals to the founding of the modern democracy. We're, of course, talking about the Freemasons.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
A quick word from our sponsors. This day in history. On December 18, 1865, the United States formally ended the institution of slavery with the adoption of the 13th Amendment. Although the amendment had been passed by Congress months earlier, it was officially ratified when Georgia became the 27th state, which then approved it on this date. With that final vote, the words neither slavery nor involuntary servitude became part of the Constitution. On December 18, 1957, American audiences first saw The Bridge on the River Kwai, the World War II epic that went on to win 7 Oscars and helped redefine how Hollywood portrayed war, duty, and moral conflict. Story of the day. To understand the Freemasons, we have to travel back to the Middle Ages, to the era of cathedrals, guilds, and craft secrets. In 13th century Europe, Masons were skilled stoneworkers, literally masons, men who built castles, cathedrals, and fortresses. They belonged to guilds that regulated their trade, ensuring quality craftsmanship, but also protecting their secrets of geometry and design that allowed them to raise walls that seemed to touch heaven itself. Most craftsmen were operative masons, literal builders. But over time, as cathedral construction waned, these guilds began to admit speculative or honorary members, men who were not builders of stone, but seekers of moral and philosophical truth. By the early 1600s, these speculative masons began transforming what had been a trade guild into something quite new, a fraternity devoted to moral instruction, personal improvement, and fellowship, all cloaked in the language and symbols of architecture. The trowel became the symbol of brotherly love. The square and compass represented morality and reason. The unfinished temple stood for humanity's continual striving toward perfection. And in the candlelight lodges of England and Scotland, a new kind of society took shape, one that blurred the line between the practical and the mystical. Modern Freemasonry, as we know it today, was formally established on June 24, 1717, when 4 London lodges came together to form the Grand Lodge of England. It was a pivotal moment. The Enlightenment was reshaping Europe, an age of reason, science, and questioning old authorities. The lodges became a microcosm of that very new world, a space where men of different social classes and faiths could meet as equals, bound not by birth or rank, but by shared ideals. Within the lodge, a nobleman and a tradesman were brothers. Discussions ranged from architecture and mathematics to philosophy and ethics. The Masonic motto, "Making good men better," reflected the era's moral optimism. As the movement spread, it carried with it not just ritual and secrecy, but a quiet revolution in thinking. By the mid-18th century, lodges were flourishing in France, Germany, and the American colonies. Their members included scientists, philosophers, merchants, and revolutionaries. No discussion of the Freemasons, however, is complete without the claim, part truth, part legend, that they helped ignite the democratic revolutions of the 18th century. In America, many of the founding fathers were indeed Masons. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, Paul Revere, and later Andrew Jackson. The Masonic emphasis on liberty, equality, and fraternity resonated deeply in an age of independence and reform. Masonic lodges served as gathering places for men who were questioning monarchy, championing reason, and envisioning new political orders. In France, Freemasons were among the intellectuals who debated Enlightenment ideals before the Revolution. The phrase liberty, equality, fraternity, later adopted as the French national motto, actually first appeared in Masonic writings. But this openness also made that fraternity a target of suspicion. To monarchs and clergy, the idea of secret societies meeting behind closed doors, discussing equality and progress, well, that looked dangerous, even subversive. From its earliest days, Freemasonry walked a fine line between discretion and mystery. Its ceremonies were filled with elaborate rituals, passwords, and symbols. Members advanced through degrees, entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason, each involving moral allegories drawn from the story of King Solomon's temple. The secrecy served practical purposes. It fostered unity, trust, and a sense of belonging. But it also invited fear. In 1738, Pope Clement XII issued the first papal bull condemning Freemasonry, accusing it of fostering, and I quote, moral relativism, end quote, and undermining the church. Catholics were forbidden to join, under pain of excommunication. Other rulers soon followed suit. In France, Austria, and Prussia, Masons were accused of conspiring against the throne. In Spain and Portugal, they were quite literally hunted by the Inquisition. By the 19th century, conspiracy theories about Freemasonry had become a global phenomenon, linking it to revolutions, heresies, and secret world governments. In the United States, anti-Masonic sentiment reached a fever pitch with the William Morgan affair of 1826, when a man who had threatened to expose Masonic secrets vanished mysteriously, allegedly kidnapped and murdered by fellow Masons. Public outrage led to the formation of America's first third party, the Anti-Masonic Party, proof that even in a democracy, secrecy breeds suspicion. So what actually happens inside a Masonic lodge, you might ask? Well, despite centuries of speculation, it is not nearly as sinister as people imagine. Freemasonry isn't a religion, though it requires members to believe in supreme being, regardless of faith. Meetings open with prayers but focus on ethical lessons, charity, and self-improvement. The rituals, often misunderstood as a cult, are actually symbolic dramas teaching moral truths. The legend of Hiram Abiff, the mythical builder of Solomon's temple, who is slain and then resurrected, serves as the allegory for integrity, sacrifice, and the immortality of the soul. The great architect of the universe, a Masonic term for God, is a unifying concept, allowing men of different religions to worship together without conflict. In practice, Masonic lodges have often been centers of philanthropy, funding hospitals, orphanages, scholarships, and disaster relief. Yet for outsiders, the combination of secrecy, symbolism, and influence remains irresistible fuel for rumor. Over the centuries, the Freemasons have been accused of everything from satanic worship to world domination. In the 1790s, writers like Jack Robison and A. Barruel claimed that the Masons, in league with the Illuminati, orchestrated the French Revolution. In the 20th century, totalitarian regimes like Hitler's Germany to Franco's Spain persecuted Masons as enemies of the state. Nazi propaganda portrayed them as part of a Jewish Masonic plot to control the world. Tens of thousands of Freemasons were sent to concentration camps, forced to wear a red triangle marked with the letter F. Even in more democratic societies, Masonic influence has been viewed with suspicion. In Britain, police officers and judges were once required to declare Masonic membership out of fear that brotherly ties might bias justice. In pop culture, Freemasonry obviously became a favorite subject of thrillers and films, from National Treasure to The Da Vinci Code, blending real symbolism with wild speculation. The truth, however, as always, is much less dramatic and more human. Freemasonry isn't a shadow government. It's a fraternity, centuries old, occasionally elitist, but fundamentally devoted to moral improvement and community service. Its secrecy, far from proof of conspiracy, may simply be what has kept it alive for so long, a sense of shared mystery in an increasingly public world. For the good of the order, this week I've been revisiting some of the writings and interviews of historian Stephen Ambrose, the man behind Band of Brothers, Undaunted Courage, and so many of the other books that shaped how Americans think about leadership, sacrifice, and the 20th century. What always strikes me about Ambrose is that he never approached history as an academic puzzle. He approached it kind of as a profoundly human story. Ambrose once said, "History is about people. You don't study eras or movements. You study individuals, because individuals make history happen." And the more I think about that line, the more I realize how deceptively simple it is. We tend to talk about the past in sweeping terms: World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Industrial Revolution. But Ambrose insisted that these weren't abstract forces. They were the sum of millions of decisions made by people who were scared, hopeful, tired, brave, selfish, or generous. People who often didn't know the significance of the moment that they were living through. Ambrose believed the job of history wasn't to judge from a distance, but to understand up close, to listen, to pay attention to the small choices that reveal character. That's why he interviewed so many ordinary soldiers. He always said, the real history of World War II isn't found in the headquarters, it's found in the foxholes. In other words, history is built from the ground up, not the top down. But Ambrose also had a moral dimension to his work. He believed that history teaches us what courage looks like, not in heroic mythology, but in ordinary people who do the right thing when the world is falling apart. He once also said, "The more I study history, the more I believe that character is destiny." When you study people long enough, across centuries and countries, you start to see patterns. Not patterns of politics or economics, but patterns of virtue. Patterns of what human beings choose to do when no one is watching. I guess Ambrose wanted us to understand that history isn't simply something that happened. It's something that people made, moment by moment, decision by decision. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If you have any questions or comments, you can always shoot me an email at peter@historyshortspodcast.com or visit www.historyshortspodcast.com or look for History Shorts Podcast on Facebook, X, and Patreon. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all guys tomorrow.